Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Star Trek Picard Season 3 Episode 1, The Next Generation. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Star Trek Picard, so I have to start with a spoiler warning for Picard Season 3 Episode 1. If you haven't seen up to this point, you will not want to watch this video, otherwise some things will be spoiled for you. So, if you know how I feel about Picard, you know that I didn't care that much for season 1. I thought it was a mixed bag. There were some great moments, but mostly poor moments, and it was very badly paced. And it didn't end on a very high note. It ended with a lot of contrivances. So it started out really good and has a really good episode when Riker showed up, but other than that, it was kind of not that great. Season 2 was the biggest dumpster fire in existence. I will stand by to my grave that it was the worst season of Star Trek and is the one I absolutely, positively would least want to watch. It's just agony to sit through 10 hours of absolute crap. So, knowing that, you know that I'm very skeptical when coming into season 3. Now, I've been reading a lot, or watching a lot of reviews of, some reviewers have been getting the first 6 episodes early, and everything has been really positive. I've heard a lot of people say, "Oh, this is like feels like Star Trek Next Generation. This feels like Trek. This is a much better than the previous 2 seasons." And I've watched an interview with the showrunner, and so with the showrunner Terry Matalas or whatever his name is, he apparently was the showrunner for season 2 of Picard, but he was only responsible for the first 2 episodes, which are the 2 least offensive episodes in the season. In fact, if you watch my reviews for those episodes when they first came out, it's like, I love it, this is great, I can't wait for it, and then it would just turn into a train wreck, and then those episodes weren't so good in retrospect after seeing how the rest of the season sucked. Point is, though, he wasn't really involved with the rest of the season, and I was saying to myself, well, maybe that's part of the reason why that season sucked, because there was different writers coming in, there was tension or commotion behind the scenes, and it was not a cohesive, and that's, yeah, and so this time with season 3, he said he was there the whole time. He said it was his baby. He was keeping his eyes on it. He's a huge Star Trek fan. He wanted to have the Star Trek feel, and talking about how much he loves Star Trek, and he had the vision for season 3. So that made me feel optimistic as well. Now, before I get into my thoughts of the episode, one thing I do want to mention up front is I think Picard Season 3 has the Star Wars sequel trilogy problem. And to explain what I mean by that, the Star Wars sequel trilogy referring to The Force Awakens, Last Jedi, and Rise of Skywalker, I like Last Jedi by itself. I know some people hate me for that, but I think in isolation it's a really good movie, but the problem is it completely doesn't fit into that trilogy. It sticks out like a sore thumb. It doesn't really continue off of The Force Awakens, and Rise of Skywalker tries to undo everything it does. So point is, the problem with the sequel trilogy, no matter how good a single movie is in that a trilogy, the trilogy is not cohesive. It doesn't actually hold. It doesn't tell a complete story. It's just all over the fucking place because there was no one visionary looking over it and making sure it's the same. And I think Picard as a show has that problem as well. Even hypothetically speaking, let's say season 3 of Picard is awesome and I'm blown away by it and I love it and I think it's one of the best seasons of Trek in existence. I still would look at the show of Picard as a whole as a mess, because season 1 was, started out good but then went to shit, and then season 2 kind of jumped 5 years in between seasons, and it was felt like a different story, and now season 3 jumped a few years and has almost a completely different cast. Only 7 of 9 and Raffi are returning, and both of them are in completely different situations than when we saw them on the rest of the show. So it feels like no matter how good this season is, it feels like the show of Picard is still not going to be a good show overall. I'm never going to say Picard's a good show because it's completely incohesive each season with one another. So that's the one thing I wanted to point out first. Now, to get into this episode, I don't think I'm going to think season 3 of Picard is a masterpiece, unfortunately. And to be fair, and to be honest and upfront, I kind of came in and coming into watching this very skeptical. Like, this going to have to work very fucking hard to win me over because I'm not going to be fooled again. Like I was in season 2, at the start of season 2, the first episode, I was like, oh, this is so good, this is so great, I can't wait to see. I was giving them the benefit of the doubt, and then they took that benefit and they crushed me. They crushed my soul by giving me this giant piece mess dumpster fire bullshit. So I'm coming into season 3 a hell of a lot more guarded. So that is a disclaimer I will give. And I was not impressed with this episode. I disagree with the people saying that that season 3 felt like Next Generation, or at least based off this one episode. I could go with the rest of the series, but if this episode is any indication of how the rest of the series go, and I'm sure that it is, because there's a lot of tonal things in this episode which they can't really undo. Like, in other episodes, maybe there'll be less of it going forward, but they can't undo it without a drastic change. And so this doesn't feel like Next Generation. You know what it does feel like? The Next Generation movies, which aren't that good. And in fact, like, the music is one thing, because I was excited about the music by hearing the showrunner talk about it in his interview. It's like, oh, we want to recapture the feel of the music, and I'm so impressed with the music, and God, the music, if anything, is so good. It has the feel, you know what? Maybe I'm alone, but I didn't like the music in First Contact or, I almost said Prodigy. What's it called? Insurrection, or definitely not Nemesis. Now, unlike most people, I like Nemesis, but I thought the music in Nemesis was garbage, and this is what it reminded me of. Now, Jared Goldsmith, of course, is a classic composer, has done a lot of famous movies. He's a well-known composer. He did the music for those movies, well, except for, I don't think he did. Yeah, he did do First Contact, so I think he did all 3 of those movies, and I actually didn't like that music. I didn't think it fit. I didn't think it fit the thing, and I didn't like the First Contact music that much, and so it feels like that. It feels like the kind of movie music that tries to be grandiose. So that music is actually not helping. If anything, it's hindering. Now, don't get me wrong, nothing would approach to being worse the level of the fucking Enterprise theme song. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying anything could possibly be as bad as that, but it's not helping. And the feel of, and when I said the Next Generation movies, that it feels like almost specifically Nemesis, the movie that everyone hates. Like, that's what this felt like to me. And also, it's still, people are like, oh, this is a totally different tone and feels totally different than the previous seasons of Picard. That's not what I'm getting. This feels like very much in that, like, modern sensibility, modern era, high action, high take, blah, 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 kind of tone, especially when they go to that, like, that planet where Raffi was, like, getting drugs or whatever. It felt like the extremely modern, like, rave type planet. And how does that feel like Next Generation? Like, the Next Generation. And also the way it opened with that music was just like the feel of fucking Picard Season 1. That's how Picard Season 1 opened. In fact, when they opened the show with that music, I had a visceral reaction of, oh, God, no, not this again. And it also felt like Nemesis, because that song that they played at the start of Picard Season 1 was from the movie Nemesis. This does not evoke the feeling of Next Generation. This evokes the feeling of Nemesis, the movie everyone hates. So why are people big on it? I don't know. But anyway, And plus, like, the way, like, it starts with Beverly having this huge rifle, and then these aliens break through the fucking hatch, and they have the eyes wide shut orgy masks. You know what I'm talking about? You notice that? Am I the only one that noticed that those alien invaders were wearing the orgy mask they wear in that movie, Eyes Wide Shut? I was like, hey, are they going to an orgy or are they invading a ship? What's going on here? And I can't be the only one who noticed that. But then, alright, and so then Beverly gets out her big facial rifle and goes, I'm like, yeah, sure, this feels exactly like Next Generation. I remember all those episodes of Next Generation when Dr. Crusher would break out her huge facial rifle and go, like, okay. And maybe, you know, just because it doesn't feel like Next Generation, by the way, doesn't mean it's not going to be good. You can be good without feeling like Next Generation, but that's what people have been saying. These reviewers, these early reviewers are like, oh, this feels like Next Generation. I'm like, no, it does not. And so it could still be good. And I'm not saying this automatically makes it suck that it doesn't feel like Next Generation, but I'm having a hard time associating this to Beverly Crusher. Like, this doesn't feel like a Beverly Crusher. This feels like I'm watching some modern action film with a totally different character, like one of those Terminator reboot films or something like that. And so, yeah, I'm just having a hard time associating this with the characters that they're trying to get me to be nostalgic about. Like, they are trying to get me to be nostalgic about these characters. And then, okay, and so then we get to the whole thing with, at least they had Laris. I always call her Varys all the times. But anyway, at least they had Laris in the episode, because I was worried that she would just disappear off screen. They would just say that her and Picard broke up in between seasons. For at least I will give them credit that they're actually still together, but then they're going off on this plan, and obviously she's going to disappear for the rest of the season, which is, you know, that's fine. They do it that way, so I give him credit for that. I will say that. But then Picard goes off on his mission, and he enlists Riker. And, you know, so far so good. And they're like, okay, we need to get to this planet. And she said no Starfleet, which I don't know the reason of why she's saying no Starfleet yet, but it better fucking be good, because it seems like contrived writing for me, or like it could be contrived writing of why she's excluding Starfleet, just so they could come up with the excuse why Picard and Riker had to do this bullshit and go on the down low, where it would make more sense if they just, you know, went with Starfleet. But if they give me a good explanation, a good reason, and yeah, it was actually really reminiscent. Her whole message to him was really reminiscent to the first season episode Conspiracy, how they're all like being hush hush, you can't let Starfleet know. And so if there's a good reason for it, like there was in that episode, then okay, then I'll be fine with it. But I'm more worried that the reason's going to be kind of lame, and that is mostly just contrived writing. But we'll see. So Riker comes up with this plan to go into the Titan A, and they're acting. So this is Titan A. So I'm assuming it's a different ship than the Titan, right? But why, when he talks to the captain, he's acting like it's the same ship that Riker has. Like, I had to rip out your jazz from the library. If it was a new ship, like, I suppose they could have transferred the library of the last Titan, but I don't know. Because this is not what the Titan looks like if it's not a new ship. But it says A, that implies it's a new ship, but they're acting like it's not a new ship. But this is not the Titan, because the Titan we saw, I don't know if we actually saw it on Nemesis, and I was trying to think, there was mostly B canon we saw it, but we did see it in actual canon, Lower Decks, and I'm sorry, Lower Decks is fucking canon. It was Akira class, not this new Constitution-esque. I hate this ship. Now, I'm not usually one that comments on ship designs. Like a lot of people were like up in arms about this Discovery and how ugly they thought it looked. I don't care. I usually don't care about ships. A ship is a ship. But this ship, like how it looks like a mix between the original series Constitution class and with like next generation technology, I actively don't like it. I think it's ugly. I hate it. But, and then so they go on board, and 7 of 9 is the first officer in Starfleet. She wasn't in Starfleet last time. How is she a commander and a first officer all of a sudden? Maybe they gave her a boost because of her experience or whatever. Could be, I suppose. I don't know. But then we get the scene with the... Oh, God, I can't even remember that captain's name now. The captain guy. I hated this scene. I hated it so much. God damn, I hated this scene. It seems so contrived. And it's like, again, the way, and I remember seeing this from the trailer, and I thought it was kind of dumb, but I didn't realize he was being a total asshole to them. And so the fact that he was being an asshole to them made it even worse. It's funny because I watched another review where they compared him to Captain Jellicoe, and Captain Jellicoe was a terrible captain. And so it's like, people always complain about the evil admiral trope or the asshole admiral trope in Star Trek. They do that for plot contrivance in order to create tension. And I feel like even though this is an admiral, it's a captain, they're doing it for the same reason. To artificially create tension or create this thing. And the point is like, you guys are reckless, and I'm not going to let you come in here and you would like to destroy things, and we're not going to be flipping any ships or destroying any ships and firing explosions everywhere. I'm like, I would go up to that dude and be like, hey, have you actually watched the fucking Next Generation? For most of the show, they're sitting there doing diplomacy. They're talking about to the Shellyak about Article C 223, and they're fucking like just sitting on the ship going to concerts and playing violins and shit. That's it. Lower Decks even brought this shit up. They're not doing explosions. Again, he's referring to the fucking movies, not the actual show. And even in the movies, that's just a few examples of them, getting to firefights and shit, and saying, you're reckless and irresponsible. That is completely not, that's not Picard and Riker. Picard and Riker are not fucking irresponsible. Like, this is not describing the characters I know. They're rewriting the whole fucking thing and coming up with this different, just contrived bullshit in order to create tension, for this episode, and it doesn't fucking work. And the way he's like the total asshole, and he insists that 7 of 9 call herself Commander Hansen, and he had that asshole remark about because you're both Borg, and like, I hate this character. And let me clarify what I mean. I hate the way he's writing. I hate the writing around this character. It's not like an in-universe, that guy's such an asshole. Like, there's some assholes that work for the story, like Joffrey from Game of Thrones, or even Jellicoe, even though he's a very bad captain. He worked for the story. God, Jellicoe's a terrible captain. Anyone that says otherwise is just wrong. But anyway, sorry, a tangent on that. And it's not that I hate the character, I think he's written poorly. I think this is contrived bullshit. I think this is bad writing. That's what I mean when I say I hate this character. I think this is contrived bullshit, and it doesn't fit into Next Generation. And it's just, and if Riker knew that this guy was such an asshole, why is this his plan? Why didn't he choose a different ship? And if he didn't know this guy was such an asshole, then he's a fucking moron, and his plan sucks. He should have came up with a better ship that's more, just because they're like, you know the first officer. Well, the first officer isn't a big deal. And then they had this contrived nonsense with 7 of 9 defies orders, and they imply this like loyalty that she has to Picard, but does she really know him that well? I mean, kind of, sort of. I do like the name drop of Janeway, though. I do like how she was like, well, you and Janeway convinced me to go into Starfleet. And I'm like, well, that makes sense. that Janeway would, and that he wouldn't encourage her. But this, I don't know. And the whole thing, how it felt like very, very fake stakes. And then we saw LaForge's daughter, and she was, smiling at them. And they're like, hey, you're LaForge's daughter. It just seemed exactly like the exact same scene from Generations when they saw Sulu's daughter on the Enterprise B. It was like the exact same scene. At least I thought so. But anyway, yeah, and so I guess I haven't mentioned Raffi yet. I was really pissed off when they were showing her as a drug addict, but then when they revealed that she was just undercover, I'm like, okay, that's a little bit better. But as I said, the whole scenes with her had a really strong modern sensibility. And then and I want to know who Amanda Plummer's character is, and what's the deal, and why does she have her minions wear white orgy masks? I don't know. It just seems, and I remember seeing it from the trailer. She just seems goofy. Some people are like, "Oh, she's such a great villain," and over the top. It just seems really goofy to me. And I was thinking of stuff like Generations, the film Generations with Soren. He's just in how when that movie first came out, Rick Berman's like, "Oh, this is a villain that will be as great as Khan," and he's a really forgettable throwaway bad guy. And I think pretty much most of the villains in all the Star Trek movies, the modern ones that came out since 1993 or 1994, whenever Generations came out, were all throwaway bad guy villains. The only one I liked was Shinzon, but then everyone likes to shit on him because they hate Nemesis, but I think they're wrong. But anyway, he was the only decent villain that they ever had, but they were still doing that. They do that same stupid trope every single time, and now they're doing it again. And this is a problem, I think, of emulating the Next Generation films rather than the Next Generation show, which is definitely the gigantic vibe I get from this first episode, is that the movies were just tropey, and they were trying to they weren't that good. Not even First Contact. Sorry to burst your bubble. I know a lot of people loved First Contact, but for me, I thought it was average at best. That had a lot of issues. So I don't really want to watch a show that emulates the Next Gen movies, because the Next Gen movies were not that good. Now, the one good thing I will say about how I'm feeling about season 3 is maybe it probably won't be as bad as season 2, but that is an incredibly low bar because season 2 was the worst you could possibly get of any show ever. To say, oh, this won't be a complete other dumpster fire disaster that I'd rather sit there and watch a pile of shit on the screen for 10 hours straight is not that big of a compliment. So, yeah, and then we meet the dude who was being locked away at the intro in Beverly's ship, and he says he's Beverly's daughter. I think he is. There was a rumor going on months and months ago, I heard, that this might be the son of Jean-Luc and Beverly, and I do think they're leaning that way, especially giving him a British accent. I think but why would he have a British accent? I don't know. It depends on where he was raised, with nothing to do with who his genetic father was, even if he never met him. But anyway, you know what? And if they revealed that, I remember hearing about that, I'm like, that sounds so dumb. But if they revealed that, I actually don't think it would be the worst thing ever. I would be willing to go with that. I think that might actually make the show a little interesting if he was. And I always wanted Jean-Luc to have a son. But then again, it's kind of ripping off, Kirk meeting David in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. They're just ripping off the movies. Anyway, yeah, and he said it was evoking the musical score. He said it was wanted to evoke all the music composers, not just Jerry Goldsmith, but God, who's the dude that did Star Trek 2 and 3? Mark Horner? God, he's, is it Mark? I think so. Yeah, he was my favorite composer to ever do that. And then the dude, Dennis McCarthy. I love Dennis McCarthy. He did Generations, and he did the music for most of the Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager. And I fucking love his music, and this is something I've argued with some people who didn't like it very much, thought it was wallpaper music. I will argue with them to the death. I think he was the best composer in Star Trek. But I don't, he said he was going to emulate them, but I don't hear that. All I hear is Jerry Goldsmith, and I didn't like Jerry Goldsmith's music for the TNG movies. I'm sorry, I didn't, and so I don't like it. Anyway, my rating for the Next Generation out of 10 is a 4. Poor, I guess, and I could up this or downgrade this depending on how the rest of the season goes, but I guess for now, like, I don't know what's happening, but for now I'll give it a 4 based off of what I saw, because I saw a lot of shit I didn't like, and it wasn't the worst thing ever. It's not bad enough for me to want to give it a 1 or 2, but it's like, because there's some interesting nuggets in there. The whole thing with the building sinking in the sinkhole and being dropped somewhere else, like, I mean, it felt like a movie again. That one reminded me specifically of Into Darkness, but that was a cool setup, and we'll see where they go with this, and they'll see in Raffi's like undercover investigations and how Handler was being really silent yeah, so there's some cool notions about it, but it did not feel like Next Generation. Absolutely, positively not, and these characters are out of character, and there's some contrivance in there that just irritate the hell out of me. So, yeah, that's my rating for this episode of Picard. So thank you so much for watching my video. I hope, maybe, probably we'll be back every week to review season 3 of Picard. At least that's the plan. But if this show starts to suck as badly as season 2 did, I make no promises to stick around to the end. So anyway, be sure to check out my channel as I cover Picard and many other Star Trek videos, currently going through Star Trek the original series at the moment, and cover many other shows as well, so be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that, and thanks a lot for watching.